From knocking out 19 of his 23 pro competitors, to his mentality that allows him to be calm, cool, and collected. This is why fighters are scared of Ryan Garcia. It helps that success started young for the 24-year-old champ. His stardom in boxing's a far cry from his simple childhood dream of competing in the Olympics. The Olympics is a notoriously hard training ground for the best champions in boxing.
Really, all I could do is fight. So I'm kind of like handicapped. It's like, oh man, I have a lot to say and I know who I am and, blah, blah, I don't want to say so much. But
So the boxer's attitude was on par with championship mentality right from the get-go. As a 15-time national amateur champ with a record of 2-15-15, he left a trail of knockouts in his rise to the top. As a professional, this experience has helped him stay grounded and erased any fear of his opponent, even when the competition includes boxers like WBA Asia lightweight champ Romero Duno, or even Francisco Fonseca. Now he's the future of world boxing and is ranked as the 6th best active lightweight. No doubt he was aided in this path by the competitors he faced along the way. In fact, Garcia says difficulty has only made him more dangerous. It's a warning sign for his opposition. After all, how do you intimidate someone who himself welcomes adversity? This is why the interim title holder walks into it with dangerous opponents and isn't ready to concede any ground. Even when he goes into the 7th round like he did against Campbell, you saw that he brings his A game to the last round. Even after he suffered a knockdown in between, the 24-year-old wasn't afraid of getting back up and going for a TKO.
For all the wisdom he gives me, I want to thank the King of Kings, Jesus Christ. I also want to say the one thing I want to encourage everybody in this arena is to try to...
It's through all these difficult moments that his image gets stronger as a fighter to be reckoned with. Ryan's consciously worked on his response to adversity, so you might guess that very little phases him now. After being knocked down by Campbell, he took it as part of the learning curve. He says he learned how to react if he ever got dropped. So, in his next matchup against 32-1 record holder Emmanuel Tago, he was confident without being rash. I'd say that gives him his biggest asset, patience. Despite his young age, Ryan's surprisingly level-headed about his gameplay. He doesn't rush in to get his opponent on the back foot, though he did that against Campbell. Later, he realized that it had gotten him a raw deal.
Hey, I'm one of the type of people, I shoot for the stars. You know what I mean? I don't care what people have to say. I go for my dreams, and I just adjust to whatever happens after.
But he sobered up after getting knocked down. Most importantly, he adjusted his strategy and reflected on it post-fight. In the interim champ's words, he's a natural-born boxer and puncher who doesn't need to press the fight. This calm demeanor is more dangerous than any aggressive competitor, since fighters like him do not make mistakes as easily. That's not to say that Garcia doesn't get aggressive. It's a side of his that has occasionally come out against Tago. Perhaps the biggest fear tactic he has is that he's way more understated than conventional boxing prodigies. Not only does this give him a massive fan base, but also adds suspense to his gameplay. When he does burst out or go off on an opponent, his attacks have an element of surprise to them. A live example of this was his matchup with a Ghanaian boxer. Audiences had been putting him on the back foot before the fight because of his long year out of action, but the boxer was ready to knock it out of the park, securing a unanimous decision in his favor. Apart from that, his quick domination and a knockdown in just the 2nd round were proof that he was back for good.
Now shook takeover, right hand right to the temple. Kind of short-circuited him for a minute, there he goes!
You could see how a lot of the competition watching also took stock of the fighter's ability to shake off the rust in such a short time. This turnaround also comes from his mental game both inside and outside the ring. It may be easier to knock down a hothead, but for a cool and reserved personality like Garcia, it's very hard. This is because they can't be led into a trap or pushed into some rash move.
I mean, the media is trying to put us against each other so much, and it's kind of sad to see. But there is some truth to it. There's not it's not.
Ryan's put it down to his personality, which isn't afraid to acknowledge his own weaknesses. This self-proclaimed openness and transparency has done him a lot of favors. It's also opened him up to a lot of negative reception and rumors about him. As he said himself, it was hard to hear the backlash that I received. Luckily, he's able to turn negatives into positives with his mindset. Because of this, he's not just focused on his mental health, but also raised awareness about such matters. For a fighter to be this vulnerable before his audience makes him a resilient boxer. fighter. If he's willing to acknowledge his weaknesses, then his opponents have nothing left to exploit. It's important to note that the boxer does all this on his own terms, and anyone else risks getting on his wrong side if they mess with him. For example, Gervonta Davis, who's had to face Ryan's wrath recently.
Yeah, when he was kicking that bull crap about him fighting Manny Pacquiao.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's when I thought it wasn't really going nowhere, but
After calling him out as his future opponent, the 24-year-old boxer and knockout prince was ruthless in his pursuit. He issued an open challenge over Instagram in a winner-takes-all. So confident was he that the fighter also highlighted a no-rematch clause. Radical fighters like this aren't easy to ignore, especially a superstar fighter who's so confident in his abilities that he's willing to put everything at stake. It gained him as many fans as it did critics. Some called him dumb, and others indicated that this ultimatum had scared off Tank. Either way, Ryan's profile had become too big to ignore. This is one reason his in-ring persona has also gained a lot of clout. I imagine this fact playing with his opponent's psyche and putting them off any aggressive behavior. If they do go on the offensive, King Ryan's impressive fight IQ will exploit any rash mistakes they make. So it's Garcia's world either way. Though of course he's not completely invincible. No one is. But Ryan's continuous work on his craft and exploring his skills keeps him insured against all his opponents so far. As a result, he stayed undefeated throughout his career. For example, in December of 2022, the interim champ began training in jiu-jitsu with Renner Gracie. As a founding member of the Brazilian fight style, Gracie's bound to really up the boxer's skill set. For the 6th best lightweight in the world, he's still a student of the art of fighting. That type of curiosity is rare enough to be scary to contenders he comes across. On April 15th, against Davis, the 136-pound fight will show just how much he's added to his resume since his last fight. No one knows, and that inspires fear, as do his press persona and onstage performances. The American fighter had a respectful press conference with Davis, but he was also clear about what he wanted: to beat the best, and right now it included Tank. Plus, he said he wanted to make the most of this opportunity, as prime fighters are so rarely matched up against each other. So he's very sure his own legacy's tied together with boxing history. In fact, Garcia said that this is a moment that boxing has been longing for. I'd say that with that self-belief that he's destined to rise to the top of boxing gold's immensely impressive. What makes him lethal is that he's able to do both: civil press conferences and brutal trash talking too. In the face-off following the press conference, Garcia was intense to say the least. Garcia's ability to balance the heroic and villainous sides to his boxing personality like this adds a lot to his clout as a fighter. Not to mention that undefeated record of his, which is an accolade very few can boast of. With his mindset, it's no surprise that he's achieved superstardom in just 7 short years. So it's easy to see why fighters much older than him with a lesser record to their name are terrified of facing him. That's it for why fighters are scared of Ryan Garcia.